How did your parents give you the talk or explain sex to you? My mom swears she gave me the talk, but she either is confusing me for my sibling or I was so embarrassed that I blocked out that memory. Me too. But I also seem to have a pretty good understanding of how everything works and can't remember how I got that information. I just know that by middle school I could reliably correct my friend's misconceptions about puberty and sex. Maybe she really did give me the talk. I was 10, male, and I remember dad sitting me down and asking if I had any questions in that area. I told him I felt I had it pieced together through jokes I've heard. That was good enough for him. I was 14. My mom, a single parent, told me to either rap it or slap it. That was the extent of the talk. I'm 40 years old and have no children and never had an STD. Thanks mom. I was 9. After watching a tampon commercial, I asked my dad what a period was. He proceeded to draw a dot on a piece of paper and he thought it was funniest thing ever. My mom gave me the talk the next day. I asked my dad too for the same reason. He told me my mom or my older sister would tell me when I was older, but they didn't. Instead, I learned at a 4th grade body talk the school did, where my twin sister passed out in a dramatic esophageal syncope episode and everyone thought she had a seizure. So we missed the rest of the talk. They didn't. We had sexual education in junior high, but it was really brief and only had to do with whatever sex IR were. Boys and girls were separated. It became really interesting to figure out how everything worked and made it a little awkward the first time trying to line everything up. I kinda wish they did TBH. My sex education from my parents consisted of 3 jokes from my father. 1. Why shouldn't you rely on the rhythm method? Too many people are offbeat. 2. What do you call romantically inclined couples who don't use birth control? Parents. 3. How long does it take to get pregnant? 3 months if you're trying. Once if you're not. There's a surprising amount of wisdom in those 3 jokes. Some girls in 4th grade were talking about this Fergie song that had come out a year or so prior. They were talking about what the song meant, and I didn't quite get it. They told me to ask my mom about it, so I didn't. That's what sparked my curiosity in how babies were born. Let me also say that prior to the talk, I thought babies were constructed kind of like Build-A-Bear. There would be a room in the hospital full of skins and drawers full of little tiny organs and doctors would construct the babies. They would fill them up with blood after putting the organs in place and sew them up where the belly button was. So finding out how babies were actually born was kind of a surprise to me. My mom brought out some old bud book from the 50s that had old bud diagrams of males and females. She explained the whole shebang thing to me and told me I would someday get a period. And then I cried. I went back to school the next day and told those girls that I finally knew what Fergie was talking about. They didn't. I slowly picked it up from friends and kids at school. When I was about 5 I know that women just spontaneously became pregnant when they were in their 20s and that scared the poop out of me. I also thought I was dying when I got my first period. I was 4. My friend and I were super immature because we were children who liked potty humor. We went on the computer and I searched up bud with a comma at the end. That's it. It brought me to a pornographic website with a ton of butts. I didn't know it was porn at the time, so me and my friend were dying when we saw a ton of butts on our screen. My mom noticed it, said it was bad. I asked why. Then she told me that's how babies are made, and I got grossed out. So I have now known for many years. I started asking quite young, so I was given age appropriate explanations and books and always went to my mum with further questions. This went on throughout my childhood, so I have never actually had the talk with my parents. I think she ended up giving my brother the talk after my dad's only input to the discussion was one testicle hangs lower than the other. Considering the man is a doctor, I'd have thought he had some better wisdom to impart. Yeah, dad took me out to teach me to sail and gave me the talk. I had to pretend like it was new to me and I didn't know anything. I kind of humored him. Seemed the thing to do at the time. There was a pad dispenser in the bathroom. Me and my mom went in once that was labeled napkins. I asked her why on earth someone would buy a napkin in the bathroom. She then told me about periods and stuff. She left talking about male puberty and sexto my school though. When I was 13 I was given a long drawn out warning / precautionary tale about teen pregnancy because my aunt, who they constantly compared me to, had her first child at 16. She had 4 kids then had to get a hysterectomy because she developed tears. They were terrified I was going to run off, mess around, and come home pregnant, like a stray cat. Before that when I was 10 they noticed my face was starting to change, so they gave me a book about puberty. That was their way of teaching me, indirectly. I thought vagina was pronounced vagina, and I thought all men had 2 dicks, because the only one I had ever seen was in an anatomy book. I didn't know the other part were the balls. Oh, and according to one family member of mine, when I asked what non-consensual sex was she described DP instead. Thanks to the shaming and anxiety hardwired into my psyche about having sex, I was a huge tease and couldn't keep a boyfriend. I'd keep sex so brief neither of us were satisfied or finished. I didn't learn about proper sexual health until I was 16 and with my last boyfriend, now husband, who was explained everything at a young age. My husband gave me the talk, not my mom. Now I'm ultra OCD about hygiene lol. They didn't. My brother, 3 years younger than me, asked our dad when he was 9 where babies come from. Dad shooed me out of the room and told me to go find mom. Little bro was traumatized after the discussion and wouldn't talk about it later. I asked mom the same question and 2 days later she tossed a Jude Devereaux book on my bed, saying, "Remember that question you asked me the other day? Here you go. This will answer it." Then she left. A few months later, my school offered sex to the 6th graders. When the teacher said that we need those not have to go into the vagina for a girl to get pregnant. I yelped. Because despite the raunchy romance novel that had been nonchalantly tossed my way, things suddenly clicked for me and I was horrified. Then humiliated because all the other kids in the room seemed to know exactly what she was talking about and I didn't. I made darn sure that my own girls didn't suffer the same fate nearly 30 years later. It was awful. I was about 13 to 14. My mom barged into my room while I was on the toilet in the connecting bathroom barking, "I need to know what you know about sex." I'm assuming she had just watched an opera special on giving the talk or something similar, since that was usually the impetus for her to barge in like that. She refused to leave to let me finish, and I couldn't reach the bathroom door to shut it on her. I ended up having to just give up on my poop. Long story short, I guess I knew more than she expected, and the conversation ended with her going, "Well damn, I didn't know that." They didn't. But TBH I'm not sure if it would have been necessary. I don't know what magazines there are in the US. In Germany we have Bravo, or had. I'm 40 now. No idea what the kids read these days. That's a youth magazine that not only had all the cool music and movie stars in it, it also had 2 pages every week with the very famous Drive Summer team that answered questions about sexuality from teenagers. I started reading that when I was like 9 or 10. The first mini sext was in biology in elementary school. That was mostly about anatomy and how reproduction works. And then when I was around 12, it was the full program. From learning about what happens during puberty, how to use contraception, to what do hormones do, including a visit from a gynecologist and a visit of RCL butt at her place, mostly so the girls could see how it is there. Close bracket. I remember that our whole CL butt at that time considered that quite silly because we were sure to already know all that stuff. And the following. At that time I already had seen some porn. RN. So I had seen how it looks when it's not just the theory at school. Also. So, it's Germany. Nah, maybe it's a stereotype, but I imagine that we are a little less prude than some after countries. Whenever I had any questions as a kid, they were answered truthfully. Now with the internet I have seen some things that I had never thought of. Still I would say that I had learned almost everything about that topic when I was around 12. And then when I had my first long-time girlfriend and we wanted to do it, we talked about it very openly. The only thing I ever talked about with my mom was when I had questions about the pill and wanted to hear her experience with it. I think there were always some little talks and pieces that put the puzzle together for me. I grew up on a farm. Animals having babies, and learning some basics about how that happens just happened over time. In a child-friendly way by my mom. The cat has little babies in her belly, and a rather direct way by my dad. Keep your stupid rabbits from ducking the whole time. I figured it out on my own. I like anatomy books and I read several in preschool. I got to that section and sort of just figured it out. They gave me a book written to explain the subject to kids. Then we had a Q&A session. I think they did it this way because they knew I love reading and would absolutely read through the whole thing in detail, which I did. Did anyone else have to read Drive? James Dobson's Preparing for Adolescence? Not only did I get the talk from my parents, but my Christian school mandated that we all read that book and watch several informational videos about abstinence. My parents somehow managed to redirect those awkward conversations to our neighbor who would tell me about these things. I guess they trusted her with it because she's a very straightforward, say it as it is kind of person. Unfortunately for me, I got some problematic answers from her such as so what is sperm? Well, it's something like bad poo. They didn't. Figured it out myself. They probably figured I knew when they found porn in my favorites list when I was like 8. I was not smart. Never did. Had to learn it on my own. Brought on some hilarious experiences, though. So I don't regret it. I also don't regret it because my dad was a strict Catholic and I never had my BO mom around. So he probably would have fueled me with bullshit so that I didn't have sex until marriage. My mom never gave me the talk. The only closest thing she mentioned regarding my body was your body is changing. Make sure you close the curtains in your room so the neighbors don't see you. And that was that. As soon as I notice my daughter's changing, you bet I'm talking to them about everything. I don't want them to feel lost or embarrassed like I was. My mom just told me if I wanted condoms, she'd buy them. To be fair, my mom got pregnant with her first kid at 14 and had me about 15 years later. We didn't have the strict rules and morals other families did. They didn't. Thankfully I went to a museum in 5th grade that explained way more than I ever would have gotten from teachers or my parents. The closest I got to the talk was literally one sentence. Mom called me and said, "Put a helmet on that soldier." I was in college. They brought it up with me briefly and me already learning from the playground asked them a bunch of questions they didn't even know I knew, and my mom busted a gut laughing. I kinda wish they explained it to be a little better personally, like just how 6 walks, but about other things or to steer clear of, would have saved a lot of time and confusion. It didn't have to be in an inappropriate fashion, but a more straightforward, mature conversation would have helped, I think. Didn't even mention dating somebody. Even so, I had classmates, friends, internet, porn, Wikipedia and so on. That's more than enough. Once my mom saw me and my GF having a French kiss pic and said, "Whoever it is, be careful with that girl. Don't make us set up your unwanted wedding." They didn't. They sent me and all of my siblings to a CL but outside of school called Our Whole Lives in Middle School. It lasted the entire school year and was very detailed. I learned a lot, and I'm surprised that some people don't even know the basics. Exclamation mark. I asked once when I was a kid because I heard about it, didn't know what it was. My mom said that was a discussion for another time. I'm 22 now and neither talked to me about it. But what else could they tell me I don't already know? My mom, so, honey, you know how you think God gives you babies? Me, 8, yeah. My mom, well, that isn't how it works. You get babies from sex. Me, what's sex? My mom, here's a book explaining it. I read that book, and I had to wait until middle school to really know what it was. They did not. I had to figure it out by myself, and we're working together on that with cute girls that lived in my neighborhood. Soon we became more experimental, and we did a lot of things that kids should not be bussy with. So we learnt it on our own with help of Theta. If you need birth control or anything, just let me know. I was 14 and aghast. I'd known what 6 was since I was about 7 as I was an advanced reader, but 14 felt very young to me. They got me this videotape with animated explanations for everything. It was with anthropomorphic animals, but otherwise pretty accurate as I recall. I got caught watching a porno that my dad had on beta. They sat me down, said something along the lines of, while the mechanics of the act are accurate, nothing else that you saw in that video will ever happen that way. They just gave me a kid's book about how babies are made. I don't recall them actually talking to me about it. The book was very informative though. It gave all the science facts. My mom did talk to me about getting my period before it happened, but I didn't believe her. I thought she was messing with me and immediately forgot it. When I did get it, I was terrified. When I was 22, I went on a trip with a lady friend, and my mom, upon learning of this trip, held my arm and looked into my eyes and said, "Son, protect yourself." This is the only time she's ever mentioned anything lady. When I was in maybe 4th or 5th grade, my dad took me to a presentation that another parent in the homeschool group was putting on. The gist of it was that 6 is bad and birth control doesn't work, and God hates condoms. I don't remember ever having any sort of talk with my parents. I say don't remember because maybe they told me something I forget they thought counted. School wasn't big on details either, to no surprise. Thus my explanation was all really from the internet and comments from friend or friends. Quite lucky though overall considering, although to some definitely a late bloomer. First time was when I was 21, and as some can guess, that means last year, which again, luckily, was a fine experience and no awkwardness. Still, definitely surprising since no one bothered to talk to me about it or really actively dissuade me from it. My parents, I believe, had the approach, if he isn't around girls he won't have to worry, as it was touted no girlfriends until I was 18 and gone from the house, which I am. They didn't really say anything to me, probably didn't feel a huge need to considering I didn't have much of a social life. My parents didn't explain anything about 6. When I got my period, all my mom said is a tampon doesn't take your virginity, and my dad told me I'm not allowed to have 6 till I'm 30. I mean I'm in my mid-20s now and have 2 kids, so I figured it out. Oh, and I don't talk to him anymore. They didn't. We had biology in elementary school, and in grade 5 or 6, don't remember which, we were all around age 11 over 12. Back around 2000, we learned how human reproduction works, who has which organs, and what they do. There was no specific 6 I can remember. My parents didn't give me the talk, so I guess school gossip, TV, and the internet did the job. Side note, I'm in Central Europe. My mom tried to give me the talk when I was 17 and asked her about going on the pill. I stopped her and told her it was okay and that I learned about it in middle school by reading sites like Planned Parenthood. She then asked me to give my little sister the talk for her. I refused to let her pee but that particular parental milestone! Exclamation mark. But she did teach us about reproduction on the cellular level and fetal development when we were little, so we weren't completely in the dark. In the 1950s there was no such thing as 6, so it was not talked about or taught. Only slightly kidding. I learned hardly the bare minimum in a 5th grade, 10-year-olds assembly that only the girls attended. I remember one student raised her hand and asked how did babies get inside. The whole assembly laughed, even though we all wanted to know, and she was told to ask her mother. Fail. My parents never gave me the talk. I was sexually oblivious until I was 16 to 17. I figured it out after my best friend gave me a 3.5 feet floppy disk with Debbie Does Dallas 2000 on it, and I had to download a special codec over dial-up to get it to play. I didn't get laid for the first time until I was almost 20. My mom rented my school's 6th video before it was shown in CL, but so she could watch it with me and talk to me about it. I'm thankful now looking back. K. But my goodness was it awkward in the moment. They never had to give me the talk. I found out by myself around grade 2 to 3. They asked me if I had any questions, but I never did. I'm pretty sure I found out through my friend. Hospice stop was right next to our local middle school. She heard some poop just sitting there and waiting for the bus in the morning. They didn't. When I already knew where the children came from. In school we had the book. I asked them once to see what they'd say, but they omitted it and told me to go to sleep. My mom never talked to me about it. She gave me a very good book for young teenagers, clear, informative and with drawings how things work, said clearly, in non-threatening way, that if I will screw up, I will be the one who will pay the highest price, and for all my life. I got the message, and I was always very clear how unreflected moments can affect your life. It was enough info, and it was a base to build my life. Happy about it. When I was 17, I asked my mom why I never got the talk. She told me that, since I was such an inquisitive kid, she thought that I would ask her or my dad when I was ready. My mum told me about 6 and periods at around the same time, when I was about 7 to 8. I can't remember why it came up, but it did, and she just told me straight that people who like each other a lot might show it by having 6 and that sometimes, when you go through puberty, things happen to your body. She kept it simple, but explained it well enough for me to understand. It wasn't embarrassing or uncomfortable. It was just information she knew I'd need to know one day, and she thought I'd be able to understand it despite my age. She was right. When I was in 1st or 2nd grade, my mom decided she couldn't go on a field trip with me because it was her time of the month. She decided now was a good time to explain. She cold stopped at the menstrual cycle, but decided to get everything out of the way. She drew diagrams in great detail and did the whole shabaddle. I went to school the next day and educated all the children at recess. The teachers and parents were not appreciative of my work. Dad, while out shopping, your mum thought it was about time I gave you the birds and bees talk. Me, it's fine, I know dad. Dad, right, okay. That was all that came of it. Now I think back, haha. Well, they never really gave me the talk, but they always answered any questions I had. Same with my grandparents. My dad gave me a detailed description of how to be a good, responsible, considerate lover. Then my mom corrected him. I was about 4 years old when I asked my mom where my newborn sister came from. She told me the truth right away. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.